All right, let's jump right into this explainer and tackle a massive elephant in the room. When we look at ancient texts regarding warfare and captives, honestly, to modern eyes, they can look absolutely horrifying. If you spent any time on the internet, you've definitely seen critics pulling passages from the Torah totally out of context to argue that the text promotes some genuinely brutal practices. But today, we're going straight to the primary source material, specifically the Talmud and the Oral Law, to see how these laws actually functioned in reality. So, the fundamental question we're asking today is this: does the Torah really endorse exploitation in warfare, or are we missing a massive piece of the puzzle here? Critics love using these surface-level, plain text readings to claim the text promotes exploitation. But as you'll see, reading these ancient verses without their accompanying legal tradition is kind of like reading a modern penal code while completely ignoring all the Supreme Court rulings that actually define how it's applied. We're going to peel back the layers and discover the real historical and legal truth. Here's our roadmap for today. We'll start with the ancient texts critics, then look at the myth of exploiting Midianite captives, the reality of integration and dignity, the myth of buying a victim, the reality of severe restitution laws, and finally, how all this acts as a shield for the vulnerable. Starting off with Section 1, the ancient texts critics, comparing the polemic versus the reality. And that brings us to Section 2, the myth of exploiting Midianite captives, specifically looking at Numbers 31. Now, it is absolutely vital to understand that in Jewish tradition, the written Torah was literally never meant to be read in isolation. The popular internet polemic claims that the Numbers 31 text was essentially a free pass for soldiers to exploit captives. But the Halachic reality, the actual Jewish legal tradition, shows a strict framework designed to do the exact opposite. Taking these captives was strictly 100% about saving innocent lives from the destruction of war. Jewish tradition absolutely forbade immediate, non-consensual sexual contact. In fact, rabbinic traditions show these captives were brought into the fold to be integrated with real dignity. There are even sources connecting their integration directly to the priesthood in holy service. So the goal here was profound societal and spiritual assimilation, not exploitation. This law of the beautiful captive, or Ishet Yafat Toar, proves you simply cannot treat a human being as an object to just discard after indulging a passing passion. The sources from tractate Yabamot make this incredibly clear. The elementary, basic respect due to a fellow human being completely overrides the absolute chaos of the battlefield. Moving to Section 3, the reality of integration and dignity and the captive woman process. Think about it, a soldier full of the bloodlust of battle was given incredibly strict parameters that he had to follow. The Torah stepped into a brutal historical reality by mandating a 30-day waiting period. A Jewish soldier couldn't just take a captive on the battlefield. An elaborate, legally required process of mourning and purification had to happen first. He must bring her into his home, but he absolutely cannot touch her. He has to wait a full month. Just look at these mandatory legal steps. She has to shave her head, let her nails grow out, remove her attractive clothing, and openly mourn her family for 30 days. The Talmud explicitly notes that this was designed specifically to strip away the artificial glamour of war and reveal her raw humanity and grief. It forces the soldier to confront her as a real human being, rather than just some object of conquest. And only after this grueling cooling-off period, and only if she willingly accepts conversion and integration, could a marriage actually take place. All right, let's look at Section 4, the myth of buying a victim, found in Deuteronomy 22. Okay, so this is that horrifying internet myth that if a man violently attacks an unbetrothed virgin, he just buys her for a fine of 50 shekels and forces her into a lifetime of marriage. Critics love weaponizing the plain English translation here. But the Talmudic reality from Tractate Ketubot completely flips the power dynamic. It transforms this from a story of purchase into a system of severe restitution and economic protection for the victim. This was huge, especially in an ancient society where women who lost their virginity outside of marriage were often left entirely destitute. Which brings us right into Section 5, the reality of severe restitution laws and the absolute right of consent. This right of consent is the silver bullet. It's the most vital missing piece of the puzzle. And shocker, it's the one critics always seem to ignore. The Tosefta for Tractate Ketubot explicitly states, either she or her father can withhold consent, only with her consent. Let that sink in for a second. Rabbinic law states in no uncertain terms that the attacker cannot force her to marry him under any circumstances. The choice belongs entirely to the victim. The attacker is legally obligated to marry her if she demands it, but she holds all the cards. She can take the financial restitution and walk away completely free of him. And instead of buying a victim, the attacker faces absolutely crushing financial penalties. Critics claim he pays 50 shekels and walks away. Yeah, wrong. That 50 shekels, the kinas, is literally just a baseline statutory fine for the act itself. On top of that, the Talmud mandates that the attacker must pay severely in 3 additional categories, just like any severe case of assault and battery. He pays tsar for her physical pain, bashet for her severe psychological humiliation, and pkam for the financial damage to her future marital prospects. These variable fines were often astronomical, designed to financially devastate the attacker while fully compensating the victim.
Now, if she does choose the marriage, which historically provided vital economic security in a time when women were rarely self-supporting, the law grants her incredible asymmetrical protections. First off, he's strictly obligated to provide her with food, clothing, and full marital rights. Second, as part of his punishment, he permanently loses the right to ever divorce her. The Torah states he may not send her away all his days. This guarantees her lifelong financial security, but crucially, she retains her full right to divorce him at any time. So the law literally traps him in the obligation to provide while leaving her with the total freedom to leave.
Finally, Section 6, a shield for the vulnerable, and our concluding thoughts. So, the massive takeaway from this explainer is how the oral law fundamentally reframes these texts. When you read the ancient texts alongside the legal traditions explicitly designed to accompany them, what looks like brutality on the surface is actually revealed to be an incredibly advanced system of justice, a system specifically calibrated to protect the most vulnerable people in what was otherwise a totally barbaric ancient world. Without this vital context, without the halacha and the midrash, we're left with paper tigers that internet critics easily tear apart. But with it, we see a system designed to civilize the brutalities of the ancient world. It literally forced the bloodthirsty soldier to stop and recognize humanity. It financially crushed the abuser and handed the power of consent and economic security directly to the victim. When we actually look past the surface and understand the true mechanics of these ancient laws, it just completely shatters those modern myths. It reveals an enduring, protective moral core that was millennia ahead of its time. So, by civilizing the brutalities of the ancient world through these strict legal shields, what can these texts teach us about how we construct true restorative justice today? I'm going to leave you with that to think about. Thank you so much for exploring this with me, and as always, keep questioning what you read on the surface.